Boston. My name is Hadel-Lynn, and I've been living here in Boston for a little bit more than a year now. I tend to make videos more about my life here in Boston, but I figured people who are just simply visiting should also be well informed before coming here. Make sure to like this video and to check out my Boston Living playlist up above for more Boston related content. And with that, let's get started. Do not try to do the accent. I always hear a lot of tourists trying to do the pak the ka and have a yab sort of accent, and just don't. Actually, a lot of people who live in Boston don't actually have the accents because unfortunately a lot of Boston has kind of become gentrified. People who usually have the accents are people who have lived in Boston for a very long time or are actually not even from Boston. They're actually further out from Boston or in other parts of the New England states. Let's talk about the unspoken rules of taking the T. Now, the best way to get around Boston is either A, walking, or 2, loading up your Charlie card and taking the T around. I would say the very first thing that you should know, the doors open this way. Where you should be waiting is right alongside the doors. One, so that people who are trying to get off are able to get out quicker and not blocked by anyone or anything. And 2, there are multiple doors on the train. So obviously when people are trying to walk out, you don't want to block their path as well. Don't be afraid to ask people for questions. The best people to ask questions regarding the trains is people who wear like the red shirts that represent like the MBTA. Those are probably your best bet for questions, as they're probably well trained on it. This cute kid's mug is probably the closest you are going to get to a happy hour, because happy hours have actually been banned in Boston since 1984. The reason why Boston instated this rule is because peeps were just crashing into cars after getting a little too tipsy. So out of precaution, Boston decided to ban the happy hours. Now, there is a very small loophole. Places in Boston cannot give discounts on drinks. However, they can give discounts on food that is also with drinks. You still have to pay full price for the drinks, but it's a little bit of something. Overall, I was definitely very surprised about learning this, considering how liberal Boston is, but here we are. I'm gonna visit the North End. Definitely have some cash on you. This is always kind of difficult because right now we are living in a world where money is primarily credit and Venmo, and cash is just often like an unspoken thing. A lot of the older places, especially in the North End, tend to prefer cash only. It doesn't limit to, like small things like ice cream shops. This can be as large as even a full-on nice, authentic restaurant. So make sure to do your research on if where you're planning on going requires cash, and also know that there are a few ATMs in the North End area if you do need to withdraw for cash. Eat a cannoli. Do not leave Boston without trying cannolis in the North End. 3 main contenders for cannolis in the North End are Mike's, Modern, and Boba. This is probably the best place to get your first start in your very first cannoli, as they're very well known for the classic style cannolis. You walk into the shop in the North End and it's so wide, there's different lines, and when you get to the front you get to pick what kind of cannoli you want, what kind of shell. They kind of have like this little bit of like twine / string, I don't know what really to call it, ribbon. Either way, they have this thing from the balloon that they use to tie up the boxes into a nice little ribbon, which is very nice and creative for your very first intro to cannolis. Do not limit your food options to Faneuil Hall. There are other food halls that you should be exploring. Food hall I'm going to talk about is called Hub Hall. This one is a little bit more recent. Here is a pro tip. There's actually a Mike's pastry just right in Hub Hall. Now, it's not as fancy schmancy as the main Mike's pastries over in the North End, but if you want, a little detour while you're, walking inside TD Garden, I guess, or if you have an event in TD Garden to go to, you can just swing on by and have the same pastries, I guess. If you're by Fenway Park, Time Out Market is probably your greatest place to go to. And you know, the ceilings are very high, so it makes it feel very large. And this is also a pretty recent addition as well. And it's very modern and nice, and it's very lively with a bar and stuff like that. And so it's a really good time if you're right in the Fenway Park region. This one is one of my favorite food halls. It's in Seaport. This one is called High Street Place. This one actually is probably the most recent out of all of the food halls that I've discussed. Now, this one is more adult friendly, and this is because they actually have a vending machine for champagne. And so when you see a vending machine for champagne, it's gonna be a mostly adults environment there. I feel like these other food halls give a very true representation of what Boston food is all about. Don't be afraid to stray from TripAdvisor here and there. In terms of safety, Boston is a relatively safe city. I feel pretty comfortable, you know, walking by myself day and night. You want to walk around in the early morning, if you're an early morning bird, I would say go for it, because we are not New York City. We are a city that likes to sleep. And so usually if you're walking around in the morning, there's probably no one around you for a good while. If there was an area that you should probably avoid as a tourist, it's a place called Methadone Mile. It's between Mass and Cass Avenues. But that area is actually really hard to get to as a tourist, as it's not close to any main public transit routes. You really have to put an effort to get over there, and it's not a place that's violent or anything like that. It's just a place where you start feeling maybe a bit, I guess, uneasy. Now, this does not mean to just throw your guard away, but it does mean that you can feel a little bit more comfortable while being here in Boston. I hope this video is helpful for anyone who is looking into visiting Boston. Let me know in the comments below if there are any further topics you want me to cover. And with that, I wish you all a very good night.